I think that we're just seeing a natural tightening in a lot of these races. Wisconsin is probably the closest to an evenly split 50-50 state as we have in the country. These races are just
Mm.
always close in Wisconsin. The 2022 race with Ron Johnson, the Republican winning there, was decided by just 1 point. What we are seeing across particularly some of these, blue wall states is that Republicans were underperforming where Trump was. We're seeing that sort of Republicans coming home. We saw in our poll, our swing state project poll, which again found that Tammy Baldwin, the Democratic senator there, was ahead by 2 points, 49-47 over her Republican challenger. Since August, we had seen an 11-point shift among independents, along with a
Hmm.
slight shift among Republicans toward Hovde. And we're seeing that sort of Democratic candidates were running more ahead of Harris. I think that those numbers have sort of become more in line with the Senate races. Ultimately, what we see is that these Senate races are just very closely aligned with the presidential results in the state. Remember that in
Okay.
2016, every single Senate race went the same way as the presidential result. And in 2020, only Susan Collins of Maine managed to win re-election, outrunning Trump by 7 points, even as Biden won that state. So Wisconsin,
Uh-huh.
always a very close race. We're seeing that tighten. Hovde is spending millions of his own money. He's up to about 20 million so far. And
Yeah, yeah.
Democrats had the early spending advantage that is now narrowed. Republicans even have a slight edge when it comes to spending here in these last few weeks.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. That's really interesting. To what extent is this tightening just the natural course of politics up and down the ballot? Or to your point, the spending, the massive spending by Hovde of his personal fortune?
I think it's a little bit of both. Hubdy spent early, but his campaign got off to a little bit of a rocky start. His ads weren't great. He was featured in them. I think that didn't seem to endear himself to voters in that regard. And Baldwin was able to sort of make the race about him, about some of the controversial comments he said about people voting in nursing homes, about obese people paying more for
Hmm.
health care, about single moms and different things. But now Hovde's ads are more focused on Baldwin, more focused on policy issues. They're not this direct to camera appeal, and that does seem to be coming across even Democrats I talk to. So I do think it's a combination of both. It's the increased spending. I think it's more targeted advertising, but just in the fact that Democrats admit they never believed this was going to be a 7 point race. That there was always sort of going to be this natural tightening, just because that's the way races in
Yeah.
Wisconsin are.
Interesting that as we consider the money in this race, Hovde is actually attacking Tammy Baldwin for insider trading, essentially accusing her of insider dealings on Wall Street, even attacking her partner, Maria Brisbane, who, as you point out, is a private wealth manager in New York. How much of that has to do with insider trading or reminding people that Tammy Baldwin is openly gay?
I mean, Republicans deny that that's something, but Democrats are certainly saying this is reminding her of her sexuality. She was the first lesbian elected to Congress, to the Senate
Hmm.
rather, and one of the taglines actually says she's in bed with Wall Street. So I mean, it certainly does. It could have a subtle message there, but Republicans in these ads, they say it's just targeted to say she's profiting, or her partner potentially is profiting because they are not married. She does not have to disclose as much as if they were legally married in that regard. So I think it's but Republicans believe they found a salient line of attack, but Democrats say again, this could backfire if they're trying to hint at her sexuality.
Yeah. Spending time with Jessica Taylor from the Cook Political Report and their new ratings here on the Wisconsin Senate race. If we can just pull out the lens here a little bit here, zoom out, Jessica, to some of the other battlegrounds. We can even stay in the blue wall of Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
Michigan. Are we seeing them all tighten in the same way Wisconsin is?
We are seeing a more of a tightening now. Wisconsin was the closest race that we had at the presidential level. They're all within the margin of error where our polling found, and that's
Yeah.
very consistent. The Michigan race was a 4 point edge with the Democratic. Now this is an open seat, so we're seeing a little bit more competitive there. That Alyssa Slotkin, her first time running statewide, she has far more money than her Republican opponent, former Congressman Mike
Hmm.
Rogers there. But in both Wisconsin and in Michigan, we're seeing the Senate Leadership Fund, the main super PAC, backed by Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, pour millions of dollars into there. They've also upped their buy there in Pennsylvania. And this is a state, we rate Michigan still as a toss up, but Pennsylvania is still in
Hmm.
lean Democrat. But that one was a 7 point race in our poll. We have seen some internal GOP numbers that have that closer. both sides believe this certainly could tighten. But right now, Bob Casey, who's longtime
Mhm.
senator there, father was governor, he is running slightly ahead of where Harris is, and Dave McCormick still running slightly behind where Trump is. But would I be shocked to see this one become closer? I wouldn't.